Okay, here we go. The top 10 reasons we can know the New Testament writers told the truth. So we're starting with the equip, and we did the first one because that's when I told you the story of falling in the aisle. And I think we're starting with, I think I actually, in my thing I said, in this I said I didn't do that. I didn't do that at all. But you all knew the story, right?
You've told us the story.
Okay.
I've never heard that story.
Okay.
When she was a certain thing. It was a while ago though.
Well, let's start with one, because I don't think we've talked about it.
No, I think I was
answered it.
So
let's just start with that. Well, the first thing is just to list the 10 reasons, and so that's easy enough. What?
No. You didn't do it at all.
Okay. Don't be stupid, Anna.
Right, you are.
Be nice.
I was literally saying Frank. Guys.
So I'm just going to read them real quickly. Embarrassing personal details, embarrassing details, and difficult sayings of Jesus. Left in demanding sayings of Jesus, carefully distinguish Jesus' words from their own, include events related to the resurrection that they would not have invented. More than 30 historically confirmed people in the New Testament. They include divergent details. Challenge readers to check out the facts. Just ask anyone. They describe miracles like other historical events. They don't have Jesus coming out of the tomb and he's 20 feet tall. So that's one thing that some people. That's a much later story, and that is and then they abandoned their lifelong beliefs of Judaism for new ones and kept them until their deaths. So explain how including embarrassing details about themselves implies that what the writers wrote was probably true. Yes.
Most people wouldn't want to record bad details about themselves or things that would make them look like stupid or silly. So if they have recorded something like that, just like to keep the story concise and true.
Absolutely. We usually want to be seen in the best light, not an embarrassing light. But yeah, so and then if you're next one, 3. Explain how including difficult sayings of Jesus imply that what the writers wrote was probably true.
Yes. Because if they made it up, they would probably try to make it as easy as possible for everyone to understand.
They would probably to make it easier for people to understand, but they also would probably make it so that they didn't look bad, so that they didn't tell them Jesus's sayings that are hard and all those things. They would have left those things out. So if you're trying to convince people that Jesus is the Messiah, it might be easier to do that by leaving those out. But they didn't. And the only reason for that is that it was true. And they were concerned with the truth. Number 4, explain how leaving in demanding sayings of Jesus implies what the writers wrote was probably true. Yes?
They're not like convenient commands. A lot of them. And if they want to like start a following of like the ethics of Jesus, they're not going to be like asking people to do really hard things.
Yeah. To gain your life, you've got to lose it. right? Things that most people would be like, yeah, I'm not.
Yeah, like die to yourself.
Yeah.
Look at women wrong.
I'm sorry.
I was just quoting like if you look at a woman wrong, rip her eye out.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Gouge your eyes out. So yeah, they left those things in. Um, so yeah, it would have been, it would have caught the ears of people sometimes and be surprised. So the only reason to do it is to say those things is because that truly is the standard. So explain how carefully distinguishing Jesus' words from their own implies what the writers wrote was probably true. They were very careful to say when Jesus was saying something and when they were saying. Paul was too. Paul had. There's a part where Paul says, "I say, not the Lord. I say." And then there are places where he says, "And the Lord says." So he made sure that, look, I think this is true, but I'm just Paul. This I got from Jesus. So you can take that one to the bank. So there were numerous disagreements in the early church, and there were theological issues in the early church. And the easiest way to solve those would have been to create words that Jesus for Jesus that he didn't say, but they didn't do that. So two of the big issues in the early church were because Gentiles began to become believers, and that was really a difficult thing. So if you are a Gentile and you come to Christ and you're a male, should you be circumcised? And it was a big argument about that. So the custom in the Roman world was that they offered, and if you've ever been to a Buddhist temple, you've seen this. They would offer food to the idols. And after they took that food away, they took it to the market and sold it because the idols never ate it. So the idea of eating that meat that was for the idols was a sin. Some people believe. And Paul walks in and says, no, it's meat. It's not really true. And so that could have been a big deal. And then Paul Paul had some people that traveled with him, and they were Gentiles, and so should they be circumcised? And that one is difficult because Timothy was circumcised. But there were other times when people weren't circumcised that were not Jewish. So again, they had these disagreements in the early church, and they defaulted to the truth. They could have said, no. This is what God says. No, they defaulted to what Jesus actually said. So there are a number of disagreements and theological issues in the early church. And the easiest way to solve it would have been to create words of Jesus, but they didn't do that. So explain how including events related to the resurrection implies that what the writers was probably true. Yes.
Which question was it?
It is about the resurrection 6.
6. was just gonna go to ask to use the restroom, but I thought you were asking questions, so I'm gonna try and.
Well, we have to go through, I'm sorry, we have to go through each of these so that it's not, you don't have to do all of those. Just, do you want to talk about the burial of Jesus?
Sure. I remember he was buried, in the same, he was put in the same tomb or next to a Jew, right?
He, well, Joseph of Arimathea bought a tomb for him.
Yeah.
But it was a new tomb, so there was
Okay.
nobody in there.
But it was a Jew,
But
right?
it was just like his
But he was, he was a member of the Sanhedrin.
Yeah,
He was a
and
Jew.
I remember this has to do with, why would the authors write record something about a Jew people literally killed? Jews literally killed Jesus. I'm sorry. There's something about
Yeah, you're on the right track.
a Jew being in that close proximity to Jesus or purchasing the tomb. Was it the tomb of Jesus, the one next to it?
No. So
Okay. I
the
was just asking to go to the bathroom though.
oh yes. Oh, I'm so sorry.
Okay.
So the Joseph of Arimathea bought the tomb for Jesus. Who was Joseph of Arimathea? What was his job? Yes.
He was a Sanhedrin.
He was a member of the Sanhedrin. Who killed Jesus? The Sanhedrin. So here we have a man that is a member of the very body that arrested and killed Jesus. If you're making up a story, you don't put someone who is the enemy as the hero. Now, he became a believer, but at that point, people probably didn't know that. So why insert a man who was part of the group that condemned Jesus to die? It was just inviting dissension, unless it's true. Okay, what about the first witnesses? This one's easy. Yes.
They were women. And it's kind of embarrassing for like the men back then to like be like, yeah, the women were the one who.
The women were brave. The men ran away, right? But the other part of that is,
Untrustable.
yeah. So, but part of that is women weren't even allowed to testify in court. They weren't reliable witnesses. And here and they're saying the first witnesses of Jesus' resurrection were women. No Jew of that day would ever make up that story. Not just because it's not admissible in court. Also, men, right? And what happens when the men are told what happens with John and Peter? They go running. Well, who wins?
Peter.
The other disciple.
John wins. Where's that stated? In John. You know, guys, right? And there's no way that they would allow the women to be the heroes if it's a made-up story. The only reason they wrote it that way is because it was true. That's what exactly what happened. So why insert a man, meaning Joseph of Arimathea, who was part of the group that condemned Jesus to die, and then the worst possible choice for the first witnesses was women. If it's not true, it's the stupidest choice they could have made. But it's true. And then it talks about the conversion of some of the priests, that some of the priests seeing Jesus died, how he died, and some seeing him resurrected, they came to faith. So why should they have not put that in there? Yeah.
And like the priest.
Absolutely, yeah. I wrote something quite similar. Luke's inclusion of the conversion of Pharisees would have easily been refuted if untrue. They knew all of those people, right? And those people were alive, and they would say, "No, we didn't convert." And then the explanation of the Jews. What was the explanation of the Jews? Yes.
The Jews like paid off the guards to say like the disciples like stole Jesus out of the temple. And like Matthew literally writes that in his book and gives easy way for like people to be like, oh,
Yeah, that's exactly right. The first readers knew the explanation. If they had fabricated it, everybody would have known. And it wasn't challenged because it was true. Indeed, it was still being offered as an explanation into the second century. But it couldn't have been true um, because he rose, and so there was no body, and then he rose to heaven. So that where's the body? So if they stole it, they would have known where it was. Number 7. Explain how including more than 30 historically confirmed people in their writings implies that what the writers wrote was probably true. Yes. Yes, you may. Yes.
they're like picking specific people to date back to where this happened. And it really they probably have like specific people or dates.
Exactly. These are historical figures. And they're still verifiable today. So surely at the time of the writing of the New Testament, that both proponents and opponents knew that these people really existed. And then number 8, and we're done for today. Explain how including divergent details implies what the writers wrote was probably true.
Because I mean, even testimonies in court of law apply to this. If many of the divergent details are off, it doesn't really matter too much as long as the main story is the same. In the Bible, the main story, like the actual point of the story, is always the same. But I mean, we're human. We misinterpret things. Like, oh, and the man said, you just mess up like a few words or like a color of a shirt or location, and it's fine as long as the main story is
Exactly. Yes.
People also focus on like different details of
Yeah.
things, and so, like in their story they'll have different details.
Right. But the general story is the same. If I asked you, and I'm not going to do this, but if I asked you to write down a paragraph for what happened yesterday, what we did yesterday with Sarah and Levi, you would there's some things that all of you would put down, the main things you would talk, but someone might say, oh man, we sang that song and I really like that song, but the details would differ, but you tell the same basic story, right? And if you can get multiple people that are not colluding with one another to tell the same story, we can be pretty sure that it's true. I think I've told you this story before, but there was a teacher at North. She was a social studies teacher. She was kind of saucy, but she had 4 students boys come into class one day late, and she said, "Where's why are you late?" And they said, "Well, we had a flat tire on the way here." And she said, "Okay, that's fine, but you did miss a quiz, so you're going to have to stay after." And she put them in 4 different corners of the room. And she said, there's only one, take out a piece of paper. There's only one question, which tire? And they didn't give the same answer because they were lying. You knew they were lying. If Jesus' resurrection wasn't true, somebody could have proven that. But nobody did. Because he did rise from the dead. So we're going to stop there. If you want to study for your quiz, you can do that. If you want to work on something else, you can do that. But we're
Fall asleep.
good for the week.